Welcome to the tutorial for Final Fight for Sega CD on the easy difficulty setting. And yeah, this game is definitely not fucking easy. I found it to be quite difficult. It took me around 4 hours and 46 minutes of solo practice and attempts. I used some save states to practice the final boss and load states, but mostly it was just attempting the game over and over again until I got it. So I set the max lives to 5 lives, and the extend, you see where I set the extend so that you get extra lives every 100,000 points, and then after that every 200,000 points you'll get an extra life. I use Hagar, and I really use throws heavily to do massive damage, but you're really going to have to get good at crowd control for this game. It actually reminds me in a lot of ways of Streets of Rage 3 on normal when I beat that. The level of enemy aggression and the number of enemies on screen. You know, not in the first level, but it picks up. It's probably not quite that bad, but it's been some months since I played Streets of Rage 3, so my memory's a little bit faded on that. I think that game was a lot more aggressive. But, I mean, this game is definitely one of the harder console beat-em-ups for sure. Even on the easiest setting, it was still very hard. So I pretty much got hyper-aggressive for this playthrough. I was very focused and aggressive. But, the more I played, the more I learned how to manage the crowds. You really have to group enemies together, as you would do in a lot of beat-em-ups. And you want to use you always want to be either below or above the enemy on a different plane so that they have to kind of walk up into you, and then you can grab them and slam them into the ground. So you want to abuse those throws. As long as you touch the enemy and you're on the same plane, you'll grab them, and then you can hit the punch button and do a throw. Once you grab an enemy, you can also hit jump and then hit down and punch again to do a pile driver and slam the enemy into the ground. And if there's enemies around, you can hit them with that as well. It can be useful sometimes, but it's a little bit slow for me, so I usually don't use it. I will use it a few times. Whenever you get a pipe, and you can beat the shit out of enemies by getting them into a straight line. They'll just line up in a straight line, and you can beat the shit out of them with a pipe. But if you got enemies on both sides of you, you got to try to smash them and then immediately turn back to the right and smash the other enemies. You don't really have to do that too much in this part of the game. But later, that'll be a useful technique. It's also good to pick up the food even if you don't need it, because you get 10,000 points for a lot of the food items, at least the larger ones. So, those points will add up, and you'll get some 1-ups from that, depending how you set it in the options menu. But yeah, for this guy, and for most of the bosses, you just want to try to get either above or below him and grab him and then slam him. That does the most damage with this character. This character does huge throw damage. You can take down enemies very quickly by grabbing them and slamming them to the ground again and again. So you want to get good at that. And you want to try to line up with this guy. It can be tricky not to lose a life on this level. I barely survived it, as you'll see. I almost lost a life. But it's tricky with all the enemies that appear, and then he pops out. But see, now I start slamming him and getting aggressive. And you just want to try to walk up into him when he's above you, or down into him when he's below you, and just try to grab him and slam him. That's the best way to do it. Most of the time you're not going to want to punch him, because, you can, but it takes a lot longer, and then the other enemies can attack you. But you can definitely get him in the punch combos and kind of beat the shit out of him, but the slams do a lot more damage, it seems, and they're a lot easier to pull off when you're around crowds. And of course, you can even pile drive them into the other enemies if you want to do that, but that's it's trickier to pull off. Also, by hitting the two of the buttons, I think jump and punch at the same time, you'll do your spin move. Now, it doesn't waste any life if you don't hit anybody with it, so sometimes you can use it to dodge shit, and you won't lose any life, but when you feel like you're about to get hit or something, you're probably going to want to use it, because if you get hit once in this game, the enemies can often combo you and beat the shit out of you, so you get stuck. So, especially when you're surrounded. See, I use it when I'm surrounded like that. You definitely want to do that, because otherwise you'll just end up dying, and it's not worth it. So it's better to lose a little bit of life by using the super move than to, get killed. I just pick up some knives here and just throw them since they're available, but with those big Andre guys, The trick for them is to, the same thing I was saying, is to get slightly below on the other plane or slightly above them. And then you want to walk towards them and then just walk down into them and grab them and then slam them and just keep doing that. You never want to be on the same plane with them. You can try to punch them, combo them sometimes, but a lot of times it's very dangerous. I prefer to, because they can ram you like that. So I prefer to either get above or below them. See, and you may want to punch them once or twice sometimes to stun them so you can grab them. You can use the punch for that. I don't combo them too often. You can also deflect knives by throwing them at the guy who's about to throw it at you, but I think you can punch them too. But yeah, I'm usually only do that by accident. But yeah, you'll see I'm going to mostly be slamming those guys. For these guys, you can kind of just mash the punch button. You have the long reach, and his punches do pretty good damage, but they're slow, so you can easily take damage. But these guys are pretty easy to take out if you just let them line up at the top of the screen in that row and just punch the shit out of them. Enemies will tend to line up in a row. The problem is that some enemies can break through your rapid punching, so it's not good enough to line them up and just punch the shit out of them. Like those enemies will ram through you. There's some fat enemies that will ram through you. There's other enemies that have other moves. There's a lot of enemies with a variety of different moves that can get through that. So you can't always just punch a row of enemies to death. It doesn't work later on. Though if you get enemies alone, sometimes you can, but the Andres are not good to punch to death. It's better to just kind of zigzag and just throw them, get above or below and kind of just go towards them. You'll get a feel for it, and sometimes you'll just get a feel that if you try to grab him, he's going to rush you. And if you feel like that's going to happen, activate your special move and just use it to get him off of you, and then he won't be able to hit you. You'll get a feel for that after a while, because sometimes if you get too close, close to him when he's lined up with you, he's going to have enough time to ram you. You really don't want to be in front of him for very long. You want to basically come down at the last second and grab him and then throw him immediately. If you don't do that, he'll usually hit you, so it is dangerous. You got to get used to it. But once you get used to it, you can pull it off pretty, fairly easily. It does get a lot harder when you have a lot of other enemies moving around, as you can see. And things get a lot worse later. Those knife guys, the knife guy on the right is extremely annoying. Later on, you'll be fighting a bunch of them, and they can cause a lot of problems because they can flip in the air and hit you from across the screen. So they are very dangerous. The boss of this level can be very hard, too, if you don't have a good strategy for him. He can really drain lives. But the strategy I use is mainly getting above him below and, grabbing a guy and slamming him into the ground. But after I do that, I'll usually do my special move because a lot of times when you slam him down on the ground, he's going to rush towards you immediately. So you can kind of tell what he's going to do by looking at him. Like if the boss is kind of crouched down a little bit, bent over a little bit, that means he's going to do his rushing move. So if you see that, immediately activate your special move and he'll probably rush into it. And then go back to trying to grab him. If you see him kind of just standing still, try to get up there and grab him, sneak up there and grab him like I was explaining with the other enemies. You're going to be using that technique heavily in the game. See, that's the pile driver. Sometimes you can land it on top of enemies. I don't always use the weapons because I kind of like just grabbing the guys and slamming them to the ground. I find it really effective. Sometimes grabbing weapons kind of fucks me up. Especially when there's a lot of weapons on the ground, I end up picking up shit I don't want and getting hit. But yeah, see, for this guy, you kind of sneak up, slam him down. Sometimes, you can also do a punch combo, but I prefer to grab him like that. See, and then I did the spinning move. Even though he wasn't about to do his charge, I was kind of preempting it. But mostly I just try to get to him and slam him. I get some punches in too. I kind of do that spinning move as a precaution, but there is kind of a way to predict it, but you have very little time to react when you see him crouched like that. See, like that, he's crouched, he's going to charge. But you don't have a lot of time to react to that. So basically, I always just do the spinning move. After I slam him down, I pretty much just do the spinning move as a safeguard, and that works pretty well. But if you get into the flow of it, you can kind of read his movements a little bit, and you can do better where you don't do that as much. But if you slam him, do a special move, slam him, do a special move, and you just repeat like that, you probably won't lose too many lives. You can probably do it on just losing maybe one life, or if you do well, you won't lose any lives. But some of it will be luck too. If you're not anticipating his movements, then you're going to be relying more on luck to hope he doesn't get a charge in. I mean, this is very easy. Pretty much just punch the parts of the car where pieces are coming out. If you don't see any pieces coming out, then that part of the car is done. So you just go down to the bottom of the car, hit it, and then go around. It's very easy. It's good to complete that properly and get the perfect, because you'll get a good amount of points for that. So it's worth doing it, because you can get 1-ups from that. I never found any 1-ups on the ground or anything in this game. You only seem to get them by points. Yeah, see, with this pipe, you can kind of just alternate left and right and keep everybody off of you. If you do it well enough, then nobody will be able to get in. It can be tricky when enemies start getting aggressive. And then when they do, use that spinning move to get everybody off you. If they get too close to you, you're going to take a hit. So that's when I use that when I know I'm about to get hit. It's better to lose a little bit health for connecting that special move than to get fucked up. I mean, it takes longer than slamming all these guys, but it's safer. You want to play it safe, because you want to, if you can, you want to try to get to the last boss with like 4 lives or more, like what I did. I mean, it's good to do that because the last boss is extremely fucking cheap. Sometimes it can be kind of simple when you know what to do, but he pulls so much bullshit, and with all the enemies on screen, he can just shoot the shit out of you. If he hits you with his gun, it'll knock you down, and do massive damage, but then there's times when you can't get up at all because he'll just keep shooting and you get stuck on the ground and you just lose a whole life. So pretty much if you get shot, you can end up getting fucked if you don't, you can't always move up fast enough, especially with this character. This character walks very slow, so you do not want to get shot by the last boss. But you probably will, so it's good to bring some lives. And you do that by doing well on the, try to do as good as you can on the previous levels. Getting used to that crowd control will make a huge difference. And you'll get used to the enemies and their movements just by playing, but whenever you see these guys that throw the dynamite or the incendiary grenades, you want to kind of just walk towards them, because they're going to throw it over your head if you walk towards them, if you stay close to the front of them. But keep in mind that arc where they throw the grenade, keep it in mind, because there's going to be multiple enemies throwing them later in the game at the same time. So you gotta be able to process it in your head where all the grenades are going to land. It can be a little tricky, but once you know the arc where they throw, then you can kind of just process that when you see them all on screen. You can kind of quickly figure it out where the safe spot is. But you got to be careful, because those grenades, when it hits the ground, it spreads out, and it spreads out pretty wide radius. So you really got to get used to that. You can also hit them, and you can hit the bombs they throw. For this part, get these guys in the corner and just punch the shit out of them. You want to group these 2 guys in the corner. These guys can really drain lives. It doesn't look that hard, but these are special Andres, and they do they do really dangerous fucking moves that can drain all your health. So you want to get them in the corner and just punch the shit out of them. That's pretty much what you got to do. You want to group them. You can either group them by jump kicking them into the corner, or throwing them into the corner at each other. But you want to get them together like that. But yeah, as I was saying with the dynamite throwing enemies, you can actually strike their dynamite and bounce it back at other enemies. And you can also do that just to get it out of the way, so it's away from you. So you can use your special move too to hit the dynamite away. These guys are very annoying. These guys will charge you, but there's a trick to them. All you have to do is line them up and just punch the shit out of them, as you do with a lot of hordes of enemies. If you can do that, you can pretty much punch them to death. But what can make them difficult is that, they often come around when there's a lot of other enemies on screen, and that knife guy is very dangerous, like I said. So managing all these guys can be dangerous, especially that slide that he does. Very dangerous. Almost killed me there, but I got the health, managed to stay alive. But yeah, you can see sometimes there's a lot going on, and it does get more crazy as you get farther. The last level is very long, and there's a lot of enemies. And then the last boss is a pain in the ass. I actually used save states to practice the last boss for a while, till I was somewhat comfortable with him. I could beat him multiple times in a row on, like, I think 3 lives. But I was beating him on, like, 2 lives, because I was actually had a life left, so... Or maybe I had 2 lives left, I don't know. I think I was beating him with only dying once. And I did that several times, and then I was satisfied that I was decent enough at him to beat the game. You know, as long as I could get there with a few lives, I felt like I could beat the game. Though on this run, you're going to see I didn't do nearly as well as I did in practice. I think I lost a few lives, but... I may have lost like 2 lives, but it was good enough. This guy's a pain in the ass, this cop, because he'll shoot at you, and he's very quick compared to how slow your guy moves. But the idea is going to be to try to grab him when you can and slam him. He doesn't have a lot of life. So the slams do a lot of damage, but you really got to dodge that gun and be careful of that. And use your special move as needed too when he gets close to you. If he's about to, if he's about to shoot you or something, try to use your special move to dodge it. But he can be a pain in the ass. Yeah, so now you're more than halfway through the game at this point. There's only 3 more levels, but the last level is pretty long. This level can be a pain in the ass in the beginning because you're going to have to dodge flames that appear on the ground, and you're just going to have to get used to dodging them while fighting the enemies. I recommend using pretty much only jump attacks so that you can, and just focus on the flames. I should have focused more on the flames on this part, but when I did better on this part. I didn't do great in this playthrough, but basically what you want to do, fight them here, initially because there's no flames in this area, so... First, kill all these guys in this area without the flames. So, you don't want to deal with them in the fire if you can avoid it. It's going to make shit way harder. I mean, if you're good at it, you can do that because then the flames will damage them. But, I wouldn't recommend doing it if you're just trying to beat the game. For this part, you basically just want to kind of just jump. As the flames alternate, you want to jump in the empty spaces that they leave. But I didn't do it very well at all in this attempt. I got fucking burned a lot. It was really sloppy, but I had better runs on this part. But yeah, it's good if you mostly focus on the flames because that's going to be the thing that's going to be the main problem. And just keep doing jump attacks and landing them on the enemies. And sometimes the android's probably going to be the last guy left. And sometimes he'll die quickly because he'll get burned a lot. But if not, then you have to dance around these flames for a while. But you can see how fucking badly I did on this part. Not good at all. But overall, I end up doing well. That's why I was able to beat it. I have a few sloppy parts. But that's the general idea, I'm sure you can do better. I'm sure you can play it better than that. With a little practice. I didn't really practice the levels individually with save states. I just played the game over and over again. The only part I practiced individually with save states was the final boss. So, I didn't have the game super refined, but I had it good enough to where I was confident that I could beat it. I may try the harder difficulties next, but I was just happy for now with just beating the game. I just wanted to... Initially, I thought it might be an easy kill. That's why I put it on easy. I thought I could just kind of blaze through it. Just as, an easy victim, a game to kill. I just like beating games, but, like I said, it ended up taking like 4 hours and 46 minutes to beat easy, so... Not to mention the 3.5 extra hours I spent playing on 2 players on normal. So, I got some familiarity with the layout from doing that, I'm sure. But as far as solo, I only played it for... I played it for 4 hours and 46 minutes solo. Including this 55-minute attempt, the successful attempt. But, yeah, it took a while. Definitely a hard game. So yeah, don't expect to beat it on your first few tries. It'll probably take some practice. The Andres seem to get more aggressive as you get farther as well, but I'm not sure if that's the case. But the same tactics work on these guys. You know, pretty much that was a pretty good execution of the technique I was talking about, where you get either slightly above or below them and you grab them and throw them. That's the kind of thing you really want to do with them. Later, you're going to be like managing like 3 Andres at once with other enemies in the mix, so you're going to have to like perform that while you're getting like attacked by all kinds of shit. So, you know, it definitely comes down to muscle memory and getting used to some of the enemy movements and things like that. And getting used to grabbing the enemies quickly and slamming them. And also pressing the direction that you want to slam the guy in. You know, you want to try to slam enemies into each other. So, you know, after you hit that grab, you know, hold down either the left or right side on the directional pad to slam the guy in the desired direction. And that'll be very useful for crowd control. Because you'll be able to knock enemies down and you'll be able to gather them all together in a clump. You know, you'll be able to clump them all together so you can beat the shit out of them with one series of punches, or you keep throwing them into each other, you know, whatever the case may be, but you can get them all together. I immediately focus on the Andre when he falls down because that's the most dangerous enemy. You know, I always focus on the most dangerous enemy first for the most part. You know, you want to prioritize your targets, you know, and get the most dangerous enemies out of there first, because they're only going to be more dangerous when there's other enemies around, so it's good to kill them. Here you're going to have to also watch out for this asshole dropping grenades as you're dealing with these enemies, so, you know, it can be kind of annoying. It's not... This is a relatively easy part compared to some parts of the, you know, of this game. But I did die, so... Now I use my first continue here, but... So you get to start where you died from, at least. And you get like 4 continues plus the 5 lives you start with. So I'd say you get like... Maybe you get like 20 to 25 lives or something like that. Yeah, probably like 25 lives. So you have quite a bit of lives. But, you know, it sounds like a lot, but the game's an hour long and there's a lot of hard shit. So a lot can go wrong. There's parts that'll really drain lives if you don't do well at them. You know, you can... These guys can be very hard. But you see, I was able to get them in a row and beat the shit out of them. If you can do that, you can dispense them very quickly. But if not, they're all over the fucking place. I also used my spinning special move when they all 3 of those guys came down, so that I could hit them all at the same time for a free triple damage. This guy's a pain in the ass. You want to just try to, you know, grab him and anticipate where he's going to be at and then slam him. But you'll see I had a lot of trouble on this one. Normally he's, you know, doesn't give me this much trouble, but he ended up taking a while. I use my special move, too, for some invincibility and to hopefully try to hit him sometimes, because he's very hard to grab. But you want to try to anticipate him moving in the area that he isn't, just try to grab him. Eventually, you should be able to get him. See, I got him there. He doesn't take that many slams to defeat, but, you know, it's not always easy to grab the fucker, and he's throwing shit all over the place. He can definitely drain lives. He can be a pain in the ass. This is probably a guy I should have practiced with save states, so I could have gotten, you know, better at him and more proficient. But, you know, I just kind of relied on it, getting to him a number of times in my attempts, and just, you know, getting better at grabbing the enemies and slamming them. So I was just using pretty much that technique. It's just that he moves much faster than any other enemy in the game, so, you know, he can be one of the, probably one of the harder bosses in the game, even though he doesn't have a ton of health. The last boss... I don't know, the last boss in some ways is the most annoying. He's probably the hardest, but sometimes you can get the boss in some pretty easy loops where you can beat the shit out of him, but, you know, it kind of varies. It's very unpredictable for me because of all the enemies and everything else going on. But yeah, you see how long he's taking me to grab and get that final hit in. It's insane. I mean... And a lot of times it looks like you should have landed the hit, but that's how these old fighting games are, these old beat-em-ups. I mean, a lot of times you can only hit enemies at very specific vulnerable points, or you have to be lined up perfectly with them. But in this game, a lot of enemies will be invincible at certain points, and you can't hit them until the game wants you to hit them. Usually after you knock an enemy down, he's going to do a move that you cannot hit him. So you just have to dodge it. And that's what most of the enemies do when you knock them down. You know, so that's a good rule of thumb basically. If you're gonna if you knock a boss down, get ready for him to do an invincible attack where you're not going to be able to damage him. Just get ready to either dodge it or use your special move, which is a way that you can dodge it and maybe sometimes get a hit in. The special move will break through that invincible move that the guy does a lot of times. As a general rule, it pretty much works on a lot of the bosses, but you got to be aware of that. If you continually try to slam the guy, he's gonna be getting in hits every other time. He's gonna do massive damage to you, so you don't want to attack the boss relentlessly. That can sometimes be a little tricky. It's easy, but if you hit the glass the wrong way, it spins and hits you, and that wastes time. So you got to kind of line up yourself a certain distance from each piece of glass. I think in the middle, and I think if you're too far back, you'll spin it. It just takes a little muscle memory and getting used to it. It's actually really easy once you have a feel for it. It's good to get a perfect on that as well, like the car mini game, because you'll get a lot of points. Whereas if you don't get a perfect on it, I don't think you get any points for the bonus matches. You have to actually complete them fully, so it's worth doing. Most of these guys in this stage in the beginning, are just going to be lining up in a straight row and you can punch the shit out of them. The guys that block your attacks, you can just punch them while they're blocking, and then while they're a little bit stunned, you can grab them and slam them. Or you can just, do what you've been doing with a lot of the guys and just be a little bit below or above them. Just come down, grab them, and slam them. You don't have to punch them and wait for them to block. And then, of course, if you have this, they can't block the sword. So with this, you can get in the middle, just alternate left to right and take out whatever comes. Take out all these assholes. The sword, the swords and the pipes can be very useful if you can hold on to them for a while. And then you got these charging guys, which are a pain in the ass. And now, usually they show up in groups. So, yeah, what you want to do is try to group all these assholes together, as I was saying, and then just punch the shit out of them until they're dead. They're very bad at dealing with rapid punching, but, if they have a little distance, they can ram you like you see. And if you're about to get hit by a ram, use your spinning special move, because that'll stop it. Otherwise, you'll just take the hit, and they do a lot of damage, so not really a good situation to have them on both sides of me like this, but I was able to manage it decently. But most of the time I would try to hoard them into a group. I throw them all together or kick them all together with the jump kicks and then punch the shit out of them. That's my general strategy and it works. But, not every situation turns out ideal. Definitely get all the items even if you don't need them. I like to put them on the edge of the screen like that because I want to see if more enemies are coming, I try to save my items till the end because sometimes you could be like, see, these guys can strip my health. So I'm going to be watching that turkey the whole time, and I'm not going to go too far to engage that Andre. I'm going to let him come to me a little bit because I don't want to edge that turkey off the screen. I'm waiting to get that for after this fight. So that's a general strategy that you should always keep in mind in these kind of games. For some reason, the left Andre just glitched off screen. I noticed that he just disappears sometimes when I move the screen. So maybe that's a good technique to get rid of that asshole Andre. Use the spinning move when you see these barrels rolling. You're going to hear a sound. You're going to hear the barrels hit the ground. When you hear that, immediately start your spinning move, and you should be able to break the barrels. Sometimes I miss them. The reason it's good to break the barrels is you get a lot of food and a lot of point items. So leave the food on the ground until you need it, and it'll make fights easier if you need it. In the Game Boy Advance version, I actually got 1-ups out of those rolling barrels when I broke them sometimes. I don't know if that happens in this at all. I don't know if there's any 1-ups that you can pick up in this game. These women are a little bit, spastic, but they're easy. You just wait for them to land and then try to grab them sometimes, Obviously, don't let them land on top of you. If you see them airborne, just move down or up or go under them or in between them. They're easy to dodge. You'll be able to see where they're going to land. They always travel in the same arc when they jump, so it's very predictable. A lot of times they're just useful to use to slam into other enemies. The knife enemies are a fucking pain in the ass, though, like I said. These guys are very aggressive, and they throw knives as well as they do a jumping attack that goes across the screen and does massive damage. They slide. They do that. That's the jumping attack I was talking about. They do a lot of dangerous shit. And they usually take a lot of hits, so They're very fucking dangerous. One of the most dangerous enemies in the game, I think, for me at least. You know, everybody has a different playstyle and different pet peeves, you know, annoyances. But for me, they were a big fucking pain in the ass. They caused me probably some of the most problems. But Andres can be problematic too when you have like 3 of them at the same time with other enemies, you know. It kind of just depends on... Sometimes it's the arrangement of enemies that makes a problem, not so much just the single enemies. Because, I mean, it seems like sometimes you have like 5 or 6 enemies or more on screen at once later on, but I'm not... I didn't count. It seemed like it. These guys are just going to do what you usually do with them, you know. They're very slow to strike you. As long as you keep pressure on them and throw them, punch them, they're very easy to deal with. I rarely ever got hit by one of those guys. So, I prefer them to a lot of the other enemies. I mean, even a normal enemy has a better chance of hitting me because they're faster. But yeah, this game is actually quite good. I was, surprised that it was pretty good. I never really got into the arcade version. I always thought these games were kind of stiff compared to like Streets of Rage and some other beat 'em ups that I like, but this one actually played quite good. So I mean, I kind of changed my opinion a little bit about Final Fight. There's a good variety of enemies, and it's pretty solid. It's a pretty damn good beat 'em up, I think, for the system. I remember 2 and 3 being better. I beat those on Super Nintendo, I believe. I don't think I beat any other versions of Final Fight. Maybe the one on Game Boy. Actually, yeah, I beat one on Game Boy. Final Fight 1, it's called. I think I beat that on like easy or something. But that was actually easy compared to this. You know, this is actually very hard on easy. The one on Game Boy Advance, I guess it was kind of moderate on easy. It wasn't really easy, but it was, you know, kind of moderate. And it actually sends you back, unlike this one. But this one is still way harder. Even though I'll let you start where you died on the continuous, it's still way fucking harder. For whatever reason. I think because it's so fucking aggressive. You know, those hits really add up if you don't manage those crowds. Because it's a long game, you know, it's an hour long, so all the damage adds up. These guys, you know, you got to be careful of, obviously, as you see. But as I was saying, they throw those grenades in an arc. So, you know, get used to the arc and get used to how the radius spreads when it lands, the radius of fire. You know, just, once you get used to that, you get better at dodging them. Try to take them out as they come on screen as well. It doesn't hurt. I'm saving that turkey up there till the end. Try to group them together if you can, you know, but you see how dangerous this shit can get. I mean, I try to do a jumping pile driver and they nail me in the air. I mean, they're very, very fast. Some of the hardest parts in the game are probably when you have to fight rows of these guys because it can go either way. It can either go well if you group them together, or it can be a big fucking mess. In this case, it turned out to be pretty messy. You see, they like killed me twice, so you know, it can definitely drain lives. You don't really want to die twice on simple, you know, common enemies. But there is some leniency. I mean, you don't have to play perfectly to beat it. But you do have to do pretty fucking well with crowd control in general. You know, you got to keep up the pace pretty well. So yeah, I saved that food. See what's. I don't really have the game memorized, so I don't always know exactly what's coming up. But I'll save the food. If nothing comes up, I'll grab it anyway for the points. The knife I threw because I don't really care too much about the knives. They're okay sometimes. I'll use them sometimes to get a few cheap shots in if I'm surrounded, but you know, give me a fucking pipe and I'm pretty much good to go in this game. I mean, I can ride the pipe out for a little while. Though it can be tricky to hold on to when you get surrounded, so you got to get good at alternating left to right, moving up and down. Use your spin attack when you're about to get hit, you know. Just as long as you do all that, you'll be able to hold on to it for a while. It will take longer, 'cause some enemies do take long to beat with the pipe, but I'd rather play it safe than go all out aggressive and get, fucked up. This guy's a pain in the ass as well. The trick with him, again, is going to be to grab him and slam him like usual and use your special move, but you're going to have to kind of be able to read when he's not in an aggressive kind of like charging mode. If he turns red, he's going to charge you, so use your spinning attack to get rid of that. But, you want to just be just above or below him and try to grab him if you can, but he's fast, so it's tough. He's tough to grab. See, as I say, I fucked up there. I never got good at this guy. But it was good enough. Like I said, I didn't practice this guy individually with states, but I just tried to improvise. I got to him enough times to where I was able to get better at him, so I improved, but, I could have gotten a lot better at this guy if I would have practiced. See, when he turns red and charges you, that's when I used my special move. Also, I like to slam guys into him, obviously. That's going to slow him down as well and do a little bit of damage. And of course, you mainly want to focus on the bosses, because when you kill the boss, all the other enemies die. So it's always good to try to focus on the bosses. If you're getting crowded by enemies, try to land your special move on the boss while taking out the enemies simultaneously, because you get it's like two birds with one stone, right? So you get two things done with one move, so it works. It's a good crowd control. This is the semi-final level. Actually, this is the I think this is the final level. It's just a very long fucking level. But yeah, this is the last level, and there's a lot of hard shit, and it lasts for a long time, so ideally, if you could get here with pretty much like 3 continues left, I mean, you'll be in really good shape. Of course, you gotta, if you're doing that, you're probably going to be pretty damn good at the game by that point. So you'll probably be able to manage a lot of what's on this level. It's just going to be harder groupings of enemies and more enemies, I think, than usually, and a lot more enemies, a lot more overall enemies. There's a ton of enemies on the level. You're going to be fighting enemies for a long time. But, when I got here with 2 continues, pretty much when I got here, I had like maybe 10 lives, 2 full continues. And I think I was able to get up to the final boss, but, with 2 lives. But that's really wasn't good enough because, first off, I didn't practice the boss at all, so I didn't know how to fight him. And so I was pretty much fucked. And then secondly, even if I had practiced and learned the boss, beating him with just dying once was a very good practice run for me, and I did it a few times. But, when you're nervous and you played for an hour and you're kind of a little bit burnt out, it's unlikely you're going to do as well. So it's good to get to him with some extra lives. I thought it was good that I got to him with like 4 lives. I did end up having like maybe I got to him with like 5 lives, and I think I ended up having maybe 3 lives left, so I may have died twice on him, but it's better to be safe on that boss and do well in the rest of the game. But you're going to have to know how to fight him, or he'll just waste all your lives like nothing. He'll shoot the shit out of you, and you won't be able to get up. So, you should really use save and load states and just practice the boss. And I'll explain the technique I used, but it wasn't a very well executed fight like my practice runs, but you'll get the general idea. It should be good enough to give you an idea of what to do. But as I always said, I post my my completed runs as they happen. So if something goes bad, but I still beat the game, I still post it up. I don't really replay games for a better run to post. I just I go through a lot of games, so when I beat something, that's probably it. I mean, if I play this game again, I'm not going to play on easy again. I'll play on normal next time. I'm pretty much done with this difficulty. But yeah, I won't go straight to Mania because, like I said, I got to make sure I can even beat normal first. I did get to the last level on normal. I got pretty far into the last level on normal, so I'm probably good enough to beat normal now. Maybe. But yeah, now you're fighting a lot of these Andres. As you can see, there's 3 at once with other enemies, maybe even 4 of them. It's a bad situation, so you got to be careful. You know, like I said, I move slightly up and down above them and try to come down and grab them. It's also very dangerous to do it the way I'm doing it, where I'm trying to grab them almost off screen. But at times I got kind of good at doing that. I got kind of used to it, and I was able to do it pretty successfully. But I got kind of sloppy here. But, you know, it ended up being good enough. But, you know, it's obviously a part where you could lose a lot of lives with all those guys if you weren't used to fighting them. They're definitely not the kind of enemies you just go up to and just punch the shit out of. You know, you got to be careful with how you approach them. These guys are the kind of enemies you go up and just punch the shit out of. Pretty much just line them up in a row and punch the shit out of them. A few of them will escape sometimes. Just get them back in there, you know, group them back together. Of course, you got these guys. You got to watch out for all this shit. There's going to be more and more of that as you progress with it. It gets more aggressive with these guys, but you'll get better at dodging it as you play. I usually don't do it perfect either, but, you know, as long as you're not getting hit like crazy, you won't drain too much of your health and life. Try to break those barrels whenever you see them rolling, because you can get good items. Also be aware there's going to be enemies that will kick barrels at you too when you scroll the screen. It usually ends up hitting me because I don't remember when those guys are going to appear, and they kick the barrels very quickly. But try to be aware that it'd be better if you could memorize where it is in the level. Then you'll expect it. But I didn't get that familiar with it. Yeah, I think it's here. See these guys? And they'll do it again, too. There's another group that's going to kick those barrels. Yeah, see, and I got hit by one of them. But there's been a lot of times where I'd get hit by both of the barrels, you know, that they launched. So, I mean, it was, you know, it wasn't as bad as it could have been, but, you know, it's dangerous. You got to watch out for those assholes. But there wasn't many at the end of the level, at least. There's a few of them, but they can still, you know, they can still hurt you a lot. And there's still quite a bit of the level left. It's a long level. But now you're finally inside, which is pretty far into the level. You're maybe about halfway through the level, I'm guessing. But yeah, see, shit's getting aggressive with all these assholes. So I waste another continue, but I have... At this point, I have, you know, 10 lives left, because I have these 5 lives plus another 5 in the other continue. So I'm in, you know, really good shape for how far I am in the level. But I still got to be careful. And it's possible I'll get another 1-up at some point, maybe, off of points, but I'm not sure. It seems like at some point, you know, at some point the 1-ups stop coming from the points. They come for a little while, but it seems like they just stop appearing. But I'm not sure. I might have not been checking it frequently enough. But you can get a decent amount of 1-ups off of points. So, I mean, it helps, but you don't get a ton of them. And I never see any pickups for 1-ups. For these chandeliers, you know, it's obvious, but you want to walk a little bit until you see the chandelier just tremble a little bit, then immediately walk back to the left and let it fall. It takes a little while to fall, but once it trembles, it's about to fall, so just get out of the way. Now you got a bunch of these assholes again. You know, you've dealt with groups of these before. They usually come in hordes for some reason, fat men in hordes. But I get them in the middle. You know, I stay in the middle here, and I use the jump kicks to just deal with them all. But, you know, ideally I'd want to get them in a row and punch the shit out of them. But the jump kick method is pretty safe, too. If you can get in the middle like that and line them up like that, you can... You know, it takes a little while, but you can kill them all with that. It's a little old trick that's used in a lot of these beat-em-ups. Yeah, no, that's good to break, because getting those jewels, you know, points can be useful for the, you know, more assholes kicking barrels. So be aware of that if you can. Here I saved the turkey for a little while because I got to deal with these assholes, and I'm probably going to pick it up soon. Yeah, 'cause it was getting a little dangerous. Those guys can take a huge chunk of your life when they slam you. So if you have half your life bar, you're taking a chance of being killed. So they end up doing a lot of damage to me and getting me in some bad situations. Not my best Andre fights that I've had, that's for sure. I've done better on these guys, you know, in my other runs. But, you know, whatever works. You just inch your way a little bit and let this shit fall. Sometimes they seem to drop items, but maybe that was in the Game Boy Advance version where they actually drop, like, food and shit. That might not be in this version. I get them confused because I was fucking around. I was alternating between the Game Boy Advance version and this one to mix it up a little bit. Maybe I'll try the Super Nintendo one again. I remember that was pretty fucking hard. But I may be better at it now that I have some techniques for the bosses and I got a feel for how to play the game. I remember the Super Nintendo one did not play as well as this. But, I think it was decent, but I think it was kind of stiff. But I'll probably try it again. I know the Super Nintendo one sends you back when you lose a continue. You got to start the stage over. I remember that. The Game Boy Advance one also does that, but this one lets you start where you died, so that's good. But yeah, this is just going to be more your crowd control that you've been doing. By this point, you've done a lot of this kind of crowd control shit. These guys are extremely dangerous. I was able to line them up into a row. And I think I'm able to do a lot of damage by just lining them up and punching the shit out of them. If you can do that, you can save yourself from losing a life or two because they can really fuck you up. He did end up getting me in the end. I don't think I had much health left, but dealing with one of them is no problem. But when you got like 3 or 4 of them, it's a huge problem. So, you know, that made things a lot easier. Of course, you got more of these barrel assholes. And if you break that, get that necklace because that'll give you some points. And now you're getting pretty far at this point after you defeat all these enemies. You got one more big room full of enemies and I think then it's the boss. But this can be pretty aggressive because you got guys throwing dynamite, you know, which can be... It can help you sometimes like that, but it's also an annoyance. A lot of times it causes more problems. The knife guys, of course, are the biggest problem that I have. Now that you got like 2 of them in here going wild and then you got all this other shit. You know, it's kind of dangerous. That slide is especially tricky and the jump move that they do. Not to mention they throw knives at you constantly, so, you know, you're not even safe at a distance. But yeah, now after this, you're going to go into the semi-final room before the boss. So after this is the boss. But there are going to be some dangerous fights in here from what I remember. Initially, you're going to be able to line up a lot of these guys and just let them group together and just beat the shit out of them with the pipe. Just keep mashing the pipe button. And you'll take out a lot of simple enemies with that. But then it gets harder when you have, you know, the more difficult enemies come out together. Cause a lot of problems. You know, deal with the barrels and, you know, get whatever's in them. As mentioned, you'll know when the barrels are coming because there'll be a dropping sound of steel dropping. So you know, start your attack at that point. I didn't really remember where the barrels were, so I just went by just reaction. But these guys can always be kind of a little bit of a pain in the ass. But you do kind of get used to where the dynamite's going to land, so it helps. These guys are very easy. You can just punch the shit out of them. Then you got those easy assholes. Now you got a knife guy in the mix. So now problems are starting to occur. Now the Andres appear. So now you got 2 Andres, a knife guy, and some other easier enemies. But they're not so easy when you're dealing with, you know, all this shit at once. It causes a lot of problems. I started using these knives to, you know, get rid of some of these assholes. You see how once you get knocked down, they can really beat the shit out of you. It's sometimes hard to recover. The enemies are very quick and aggressive. So now I'm on my final continue, but I'm already almost at the boss. So I'm pretty much just going to, use all the techniques we've been using up to this point. Try to group these assholes all together if possible. Because the fat guys can always be punched to death by rapid punching, but the knife guy will fuck it up. He'll fuck up the rhythm. So if he's in, if you don't get him locked into a punch combination, then he's going to stab you. But yeah, now I think it's the final boss. And I'll try to explain what I do on him. You get some free food in this area. You can't save the turkey for the boss, so you should just get it for the points. I tried to save it, but... Now for this boss, I'll try to explain. He does two different types of jumps. For this, you just grab him and slam him out of the wheelchair. He can't even hurt you, I don't think. But now, he does two types of movements. He'll do these short these little hops like that. If you punch that, when he's doing that, it'll just make him bounce back. You can't combo him when he's doing those little hops. When he does the big hops, you want to stand right in front of where he's going to land with the large hops. And as soon as he lands, you start mashing punch and you can combo him and get a full combo in. See, the little hop, you can only get one punch. But when he does the big hop, you'll see he's still doing the little, so he's just, you knock him back. But watch when he does it. See, I only got the little ones that I didn't time it right. You got to time the punch right and you can start up a combo, though. So you'll see when I get it. It's not the easiest thing to explain, but you can also slam guys into him, obviously. But see, like this. See that combo I got him? That does a lot of damage. See, I got that combo again. Again, a lot of damage. Let him hop back down. You move up, you move down. Let him hop down. Boom. Combo again. Move back up. See, now he did the small hop, so I couldn't lock him into that combo. Sometimes you can get him locked into that jumping loop for a while and do a lot of damage. But yeah, you're going to have to get used to dealing with him with a lot of other shit going on, so... And if you get shot, it's really bad because, like, see, look, if you try to, I use that to block the shots, but it doesn't always work. But yeah, so I had, like, maybe 3 lives left, so, then you finish him off and that's it, but you see you can lock him into that move. Just remember the short jumps, you want to kind of wait down a little bit down for him so that he'll jump down to you or up to you with the short jumps. Punch him once and then move back down or up again. Just move out of the plane that he's on. For the larger jumps, you want to position yourself that he's gonna land right where you're standing, so you can combo him. But you don't want to punch immediately when he lands. You gotta wait just a moment, then start punching, and you'll get in a full combo. And if you can line enemies up while you're comboing him, you can punch those enemies out while you're damaging him as well. You can try to do that. And if you're in a bad position, if you're getting shot at, use the special move to block some of the bullets. And if you're in a corner with him, you can use your special move too and get in some hits. But what I try to do, I usually don't try to abuse the special move on him. I try to lure him so that he'll do those larger jumps towards me, and I can combo him with the punches. I found that to be the best way to take him out. So yeah, hopefully that'll help. Let me know if you have any questions. And thanks for watching.